Let me tell you something that's going to change the way you see your life forever. You've been sitting in that same situation for months, maybe years. You've been praying, fasting, working, believing, declaring, confessing, and yet nothing has moved. And somewhere deep inside, you started to whisper a question you're almost afraid to say out loud. Has God forgotten me? I want you to listen to me very carefully right now. What if I told you that what you've been calling a delay is actually the most profound form of divine protection you've ever experienced? What if the very thing you thought was God saying no was actually God saying not yet, because he loves you too much to give you something you're not ready to steward? See, we live in a microwave generation. We want instant coffee, instant communication, instant results, instant breakthrough. But God is not in the microwave business. He's in the maturity business. He's not interested in giving you what you want when you want it. He's interested in giving you what you need when you're ready to handle it without it destroying you. I've watched people cry out for promotions they weren't prepared for. I've seen men and women beg God for marriages they didn't have the character to sustain. I've witnessed entrepreneurs demand financial breakthrough when they hadn't yet developed the discipline to manage money. And you know what breaks my heart? When God in his infinite mercy delays the answer to protect them from themselves, they think he's punishing them. But here's what you need to understand today. Every single delay in your life has been a divine appointment with preparation. Every closed door was God saving you from a room that would have collapsed on your head. Every no was heaven whispering, I have something better, but you're not ready yet. Right now, I need you to stop looking at your delay as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. Because the God who knows the end from the beginning, the God who sees tomorrow while you're still stuck in today, that God loves you enough to make you wait when waiting is what will save your life. You see, delayed blessings carry a weight that on-time blessings never could. Think about it. The blessing you get after years of waiting, after seasons of doubt, after nights of tears, that blessing doesn't just arrive. It lands with the force of divine timing. It hits different because you're different. The you that prayed for it 5 years ago couldn't have handled what the you today is about to receive. I need you to hear this clearly. God is not withholding from you. He's preparing you. Every day you think you're falling behind, you're actually being positioned. While you're worried about your age, God is building your character. While you're panicking about your bank account, heaven is orchestrating connections you can't see yet. While you're bitter about who got married before you, who got promoted past you, who seems to be winning while you're still struggling, God is protecting the integrity of your story. Because here's what we forget in our impatience. Premature success is the most dangerous thing you can experience. I've watched people get everything they prayed for at the wrong time, and it destroyed them. The business they weren't mature enough to manage, the relationship they weren't healed enough to sustain, the platform they weren't grounded enough to handle. They got what they wanted, but they lost who they were in the process. You want to know why some people peak early and never recover? Because their gift arrived before their character could cash the check. Their calling showed up before their capacity was ready. And what God gives in mercy, life will take back in consequence. This is why the wilderness is not punishment, it's preparation. It's God's mercy disguising itself as delay. When you're frustrated because you're still in the waiting room, God is saying, if I open this door right now, you'll run into a room full of lions. Not yet, beloved, not yet. I've watched people lose their minds in the waiting season, crying out, God, where are you? Why aren't you answering? But God isn't silent. He's strategic. He's not withholding. He's preparing. Every moment of delay is a moment of divine construction happening in you and around you. You see, there's a difference between God's timing and our convenience. We want microwaves. God operates with slow cookers. We want instant results. God wants lasting transformation. And here's what most people miss. The wait is not passive. The waiting room is not a punishment, it's a classroom. It's a laboratory. It's where God develops in you what you'll need when the door finally opens. Think about Joseph again. He didn't go from the pit to the palace overnight. There were years in between. Prison time, forgotten time. Time when it seemed like every prophecy God gave him was a cruel joke. But what was God doing? He was killing the arrogance. He was building humility. He was teaching Joseph how to manage other people's resources before he could trust him with a nation's economy. The prison wasn't a detour, it was the curriculum. And you know what Joseph did while he was waiting? He served excellently right where he was. He didn't sit in that prison cell pouting, saying, this isn't my dream, so I'm not going to give my best. No. He served Potiphar's house with such integrity that Potiphar trusted him with everything. He served in prison with such excellence that the warden put him in charge. Excellence in the waiting room is your tuition payment for the next level. Here's what I need you to understand. God is not impressed by your desperation. He's looking for your faithfulness in obscurity. Anyone can be excited when the door opens, but can you worship when it's still closed? Can you praise him in the hallway? Can you serve with excellence when nobody's watching but him? See, true worship isn't seasonal. It's not based on circumstances. It's based on who he is, not on what he's done lately in your life. You worship him because he's worthy, period. Not because you got the promotion, not because the check came through, not because the doctor gave you a good report. You worship him in the fire. You worship him in the flood. You worship him in the waiting room of your destiny. And here's what I've discovered. The quality of your worship in private determines the power of your anointing in public. What you do when nobody sees you is what prepares you for when everybody will see you. David wasn't crowned king the day Samuel anointed him. There were years, painful, confusing years between the anointing and the appointing, between the promise and the palace. And what did he do in that gap? He worshiped. He wrote psalms in caves. He praised God while running from Saul. He refined his character in the wilderness. Your wilderness is not your punishment. It's your preparation. It's where God is stripping away everything that would corrupt your calling. It's where he's testing your faithfulness with small things before he can trust you with the greater things. See, God is more interested in who you're becoming than in what you're doing. He's developing your being before he releases your doing. And this is where most people abort their destiny. They want the platform without the process. They want the title without the training. They want to be known by everybody before they're faithful to the one who knows everything. But that's not how the kingdom operates. In God's economy, faithfulness precedes fruitfulness. Character comes before charisma. Humility comes before honor. You want to know why some people get blessed and fall apart? Because they skipped the wilderness. They bypassed the character development. They got promoted before they were prepared, and the blessing destroyed them because they didn't have the internal structure to sustain what God was giving them externally. God isn't withholding from you. He's protecting you. And here's the beautiful part. While you're waiting, God is working. He's not just working on your circumstances. He's working on you. He's building your capacity. He's developing your discernment. He's maturing your judgment. He's strengthening your character. Every delay is a divine development session. I remember working with young leaders who would come to me frustrated. Dr. Munroe, I've been in this position for 5 years. When is God going to move me forward? And I would ask them, what have you learned in these 5 years? What skills have you developed? What character flaws has God been addressing? Most times, they couldn't answer. They were so focused on the next level that they weren't benefiting from the current level. You see, God doesn't waste time. If he has you somewhere, it's because there's something there you need to extract. There's a lesson you need to learn, a skill you need to master, a relationship you need to build, a weakness you need to overcome. Don't be in such a hurry to leave where you are that you miss what you're supposed to get from where you are. Think about Joseph in Potiphar's house. He could have been bitter. God, you gave me a dream about ruling, and here I am serving as a slave. But instead, he served so excellently that he was promoted to oversee the entire household. He didn't learn to manage a nation in prison. He learned it in Potiphar's house. The waiting room was actually a training room. The prison wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every season you think God has abandoned you, he's actually positioning you. Every moment you feel forgotten, he's fashioning you. The potter doesn't put the clay on the shelf. When he steps away, he's just going to get a different tool. So when you're tempted to become impatient, remind yourself, God's timing is not about when you're ready, it's about when you're truly prepared. And there's a massive difference between the two. You see, being ready is surface level. Being prepared is foundational. You can be ready with the right clothes, the right resume, the right connections, but are you prepared with the right character, the right discipline, the right humility to steward what God is about to give you? I've seen too many people rush into their destiny unprepared, and the weight of it crushed them. Not because the calling wasn't real, but because the vessel wasn't strong enough yet. The waiting season isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's God reinforcing the walls of your character so you can carry the weight of your purpose without collapsing. Think about it like this. You don't hand a teenager the keys to a Ferrari just because they turned 16. Why? Because the car isn't the problem, their maturity is. They might be ready to drive, but are they prepared for the responsibility, the speed, the consequences of poor judgment at 90 miles per hour? God operates the same way. He's not withholding your breakthrough because he's cruel. He's withholding it because he loves you too much to give you something you're not equipped to handle. And here's what's beautiful. While you're waiting, he's working on you, in you, through you. Every closed door is redirecting you. Every delay is developing you. Every disappointment is detoxing you from the wrong motives, the wrong relationships, the wrong version of yourself that was never meant to carry what's coming next. So stop looking at the wait as wasted time. It's not a detour, it's the direct route. The scenic route teaches you things the highway never could. You learn patience. You learn trust. You learn that your value isn't tied to your productivity. That you're not loved because of what you accomplish. You're loved because of whose you are. And when God finally says now, you won't just be ready, you'll be prepared. You'll step into that moment not with anxiety but with assurance. Not with fear but with faith. Because the waiting didn't weaken you. It equipped you. It equipped you to stand when others fall. To speak when others are silenced by doubt. To lead when others are paralyzed by uncertainty. You see, what God does in the waiting is not just about you. It's about everyone connected to your assignment. Every person who will benefit from what you're about to birth. Every life that will be transformed by the gift you've been protecting. The delay wasn't denying them, it was preparing you to serve them properly. Think about this. If Joseph had been promoted immediately after his dream, he would have led with arrogance. If David had become king the day Samuel anointed him, he would have ruled with immaturity. If Jesus had started his ministry at 12 years old in the temple, the world wouldn't have been ready for the message, and he wouldn't have been ready for the cross. The timing of your manifestation is connected to the readiness of your character. And here's what most people miss. The waiting isn't passive. You're not sitting idle. You're being fortified. Every test you pass adds another layer to your foundation. Every temptation you resist strengthens your resolve. Every moment you choose obedience over convenience, you're being shaped into someone who can handle the weight of the promise. I want you to understand something crucial right now. Your current season is not your final destination. Where you are is not where you're going. What you're experiencing is not what you'll be explaining. You're being processed, not punished. There's a difference between a setback and a setup. What looks like you're being pushed back is actually you being positioned. The ball must be pulled back before the arrow can fly forward. The further back you've been pulled, the further forward you're about to go. Stop apologizing for being in preparation. Stop feeling embarrassed about your process. Stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. Your story is unfolding exactly as it should. And when your moment comes, and it will come, you won't step into it with hesitation. You'll step into it with authority. Not the arrogance of someone who's untested, but the quiet confidence of someone who's been proven. You'll carry yourself differently because you've been processed differently. You see, the wilderness is where God separates the genuine from the imitation. In the marketplace today, we have too many people performing roles they haven't been qualified for. They've memorized the script, they've learned the gestures, they can quote the right books, but there's no substance. When pressure comes, the facade crumbles. When opposition rises, they retreat. Why? Because they never went through the processing that transforms ambition into calling. Let me tell you something about authenticity. You cannot fake what you haven't become. You can imitate it for a season. You can mirror someone else's success temporarily. But eventually, the real you will emerge. And if the real you hasn't been processed, refined, and tested, what emerges will not be pretty. The wilderness prevents this disaster. It strips away everything that isn't genuinely you until what remains is the authentic core of your purpose. Think about how gold is refined. The goldsmith doesn't just polish the surface, he applies intense heat until the gold melts completely. All the impurities, the dross, the contamination, everything that weakens the gold rises to the surface where it can be skimmed away. The goldsmith keeps applying heat, keeps removing impurities until he can see his own reflection clearly in the molten gold. That's when he knows it's pure. God does the same thing with you in the wilderness. He applies heat not to destroy you, but to reveal what needs to be removed. Your insecurities rise to the surface. Your hidden motives become visible. Your character flaws that you've expertly concealed from others become impossible to hide from yourself. And in that vulnerable state, God begins the real work. He's not trying to humiliate you. He's trying to purify you. He's removing everything that would sabotage your future success. And here's what makes this season even more powerful. God doesn't waste your wilderness. Every tear you've cried in secret, every night you've wrestled with doubt, every moment you've felt forgotten, He's been collecting it all. The Bible says He keeps your tears in a bottle. That's not poetic language, that's a promise. Your pain has purpose. You see, the wilderness is where your character catches up to your calling. Many of you have gifts that are far ahead of your maturity. You have a calling that's bigger than your current capacity. And if God promoted you right now, the blessing would destroy you. So He loves you enough to make you wait. He loves you enough to let you develop in obscurity. Think about David again. When Samuel anointed him as king, David was just a teenager. But he didn't sit on the throne until he was 30 years old. That's over a decade of waiting. Over a decade of running from Saul. Over a decade of living in caves. Leading a band of broken men. Fighting battles that nobody applauded. But in that wilderness, something was happening. David was learning how to lead. He was learning how to worship in the dark. He was writing psalms that would comfort billions of people for thousands of years. Your wilderness is writing your testimony. The message you'll carry to the world is being forged right now in your pain. The people you'll help in your future are waiting for you to survive this season because they need to know that survival is possible. They need to know that God doesn't abandon His purpose. And let me tell you something else. The wilderness reveals what's really inside you. When everything is stripped away, the comfort, the applause, the certainty, what remains is the truth of who you are. Moses thought he was a prince of Egypt, but the wilderness revealed he was a shepherd and a deliverer. The Israelites thought they trusted God, but the wilderness revealed they were still enslaved in their minds. What is your wilderness revealing about you? Is it showing you that your faith was built on circumstances rather than conviction? Is it exposing idols you didn't even know you were worshiping? Is it revealing character flaws that would have disqualified you later? Don't run from what's being revealed. Embrace it. Let God do the surgery. Let Him cut away everything that isn't authentic. Because here's the truth. You cannot enter your promised land carrying Egypt's baggage. And I want you to understand something powerful about this transformation process. God doesn't just remove things from your life. He replaces them. He doesn't leave you empty. He fills you with something better, something divine, something that aligns with your purpose. When He removes the slave mentality, He replaces it with a kingdom mindset. When He removes fear, He replaces it with faith. When He removes limitation, He replaces it with vision. This is not subtraction, this is supernatural exchange. I've watched this happen in my own life. There were relationships I thought I couldn't live without. God removed them. And you know what He gave me instead? Connections that actually propelled me toward my purpose. There were opportunities I was clinging to, good opportunities, but not God opportunities. He closed those doors. And the doors He opened afterward led me into rooms I didn't even know existed. You see, when you're in the wilderness, you're not just losing, you're gaining. You're not just being stripped, you're being dressed. You're not just being broken down, you're being built up according to a divine blueprint. But here's what most people miss. The wilderness isn't just about what God is doing to you, it's about what He's doing in you. He's establishing new patterns, new rhythms, new ways of thinking. He's rewiring your belief system. He's reprogramming your spiritual DNA. Think about it. The Israelites walked in circles for 40 years, same desert, same sun, same sand. But every single day, they had to trust God for their provision. Every morning, manna. Every day, His presence in the cloud and the fire. They couldn't stockpile it. They couldn't control it. They had to depend on Him daily. That's the lesson. God is teaching you to live by faith, not by sight. To trust His provision, not your preparation. To depend on His presence, not your performance. And let me tell you something that will shift your perspective. The wilderness is where you discover who God really is. Not who religion said He was. Not who your parents said He was. Not who the preacher said He was. You discover Him for yourself. Moses met God at a burning bush in the wilderness. Elijah heard God's still small voice in a cave in the wilderness. Jesus was empowered by the Spirit in the wilderness. Paul received his revelation in the Arabian wilderness. The wilderness is God's university. And right now, you're enrolled in the most important course of your life. You see, the wilderness isn't just about isolation. It's about revelation. It's where God strips away everything you thought you knew so he can teach you what you need to know. Moses thought he was somebody in Pharaoh's palace. He had to spend 40 years in the wilderness learning that he was nobody, so God could spend another 40 years showing him that with God, he could be somebody who would deliver a nation. David was anointed king as a boy, but he spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves, leading a ragtag group of misfits. That wilderness refined his character, deepened his worship, and prepared him for a throne. You cannot rule what you haven't wrestled with in private. You cannot lead publicly what you haven't conquered personally. The wilderness is where your theology becomes biography. It's where the word stops being something you quote and becomes something you live. It's where faith stops being theoretical and becomes functional. Because when everything is stripped away, your reputation, your resources, your support system, all you have left is God. And sometimes that's exactly what you need to discover, that all you need is God. Listen carefully, the wilderness doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you. Every great leader in Scripture went through it. Jesus himself, after his baptism and the Father's public affirmation, was immediately led by the Spirit into the wilderness. 40 days of fasting, testing, and spiritual warfare. Why? Because the anointing attracts opposition. The calling comes with conflict, and you need to know who you are and whose you are before you step into your assignment. Right now, some of you are in wilderness seasons, and you think God has forgotten you. You think you missed it somewhere. You're watching others get promoted while you're still in obscurity. Let me tell you something, God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you. He's doing a deep work that cannot be done in the spotlight. He's building character that can carry the anointing. He's developing integrity that can sustain influence. And let me tell you something that will shift your perspective completely. God is protecting you from premature exposure. See, the enemy doesn't attack potential, he attacks manifestation. The devil doesn't war against what's hidden, he wars against what's revealed. Right now, while you're in this season of obscurity, you're actually in the safest place you could possibly be. You're under divine protection because you haven't yet become a visible target. Think about David again. When he was in the fields with the sheep, Saul didn't know his name. The Philistines didn't consider him a threat. He was developing the warrior mentality, killing lions and bears, but nobody was watching. Nobody was threatened. But the moment he stepped onto that battlefield and defeated Goliath, everything changed. Suddenly he had enemies he didn't even know existed. Suddenly King Saul, who should have celebrated him, became jealous and tried to kill him. Your hiddenness is not punishment, it's preparation and protection. God is getting you ready before he puts you on display. He's strengthening your character before he amplifies your voice. He's establishing your foundation before he increases your platform. Because once you step into the fullness of your purpose, the attacks will intensify, the criticism will multiply, the opposition will organize against you. That's why this season matters so much. You're building spiritual muscles in private that you're going to need in public. You're developing prayer habits that will sustain you when the pressure increases. You're learning to hear God's voice in the silence so you won't lose your way in the noise. You're establishing your identity in him so that when the world tries to define you, you already know who you are. I need you to understand God never wastes a season. Every delay has a purpose. Every waiting period has a curriculum. Every hidden moment has a lesson that you cannot learn anywhere else. What you're gaining right now in obscurity is more valuable than anything success could give you tomorrow. You're gaining intimacy with God. You're gaining self-awareness. You're gaining the kind of wisdom that only comes through patient endurance. You see, waiting is the refining fire that burns away our impatience, our anxiety, our need to control everything. And what remains after that fire? Pure gold, refined character, a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. I've watched this transformation happen over and over again. I've seen people who were broken by their circumstances become builders of others. I've seen people who couldn't see past their pain become visionaries who inspire thousands. But here's what they all had in common. They didn't just wait passively, they waited actively. They waited with purpose. Let me explain what I mean by active waiting. This isn't about sitting on your couch eating chips and saying, well, I'm waiting on God. No, active waiting means you're preparing yourself while you're waiting. You're sharpening your skills. You're expanding your knowledge. You're building your character. You're working on your weaknesses. You're strengthening your relationships. Think about a farmer. When a farmer plants seeds, he doesn't just walk away and say, okay, I'm waiting for harvest now. No, while he's waiting for those seeds to grow, he's watering the ground. He's pulling weeds. He's protecting the crop from pests. He's preparing his equipment for harvest time. He's making sure everything is ready when that harvest day comes. That's active waiting. You're working while you're waiting. You're growing while you're going through it. You're becoming while you're believing. And here's something else I need you to understand. The waiting period is where God prepares the place while He's preparing the person. You see, sometimes your dream is ready, but you're not ready for your dream. Sometimes the door is ready to open, but you're not ready to walk through that door. Sometimes the opportunity is ready to present itself, but you're not ready to handle that opportunity. So God makes you wait, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because if you get what you want before you're ready for it, it will destroy you. I've seen it happen. I've seen people get their breakthrough before they had the character to sustain it, and they lost everything. I've seen people get the position before they had the maturity to handle it, and it ruined them. The waiting isn't wasting your time. The waiting is making sure that when you get there, you can stay there. You see, preparation time is never lost time. Every season you go through, every test you face, every moment when you feel invisible, it's all adding to your capacity. God is more interested in who you're becoming than what you're achieving. The world celebrates achievement, but heaven celebrates transformation. Think about Joseph in prison. Nobody was watching him there. There were no cameras, no audiences, no recognition. But watch what he did. He served faithfully. He interpreted dreams for the butler and the baker, not because there was anything in it for him, but because that's who he had become. Excellence had become his character, not just his performance. And here's what most people miss. The butler forgot about Joseph. For 2 more years, Joseph stayed in that prison after helping that man. 2 more years of waiting. 2 more years of wondering if God had forgotten about him. But those 2 years weren't wasted. Those 2 years were the final polish, the last refinement before the palace. I want you to understand something powerful today. Your current obscurity is not an accident, it's an incubator. The anonymity you're experiencing right now, that place where it feels like nobody knows your name, nobody sees your gift, nobody recognizes your potential, that's not a problem to solve. That's a classroom to graduate from. Because when Pharaoh finally called for Joseph, he didn't send him to training school first. He didn't say, let's give him a few months to prepare. No. Joseph went from the prison to the palace in 1 day. From the pit to the platform in a single moment. Why? Because the preparation had already happened in the places nobody was watching. You cannot rush readiness. You can fake competence, but you cannot fake character. You can manipulate your way into a position, but you cannot manipulate your way into staying power. The weight of the assignment God has for you requires a foundation that can only be built in the wilderness, in the waiting, in the seasons when you're faithful with what seems like nothing. And I want you to understand something today. God is more interested in who you are becoming than what you are doing, because who you are will determine what you can sustain. Your character is the container for your calling. If the container is flawed, cracked, compromised, it doesn't matter how much anointing God pours into it, it will leak out. It will not hold. This is why some people explode onto the scene with incredible talent, massive platforms, enormous influence, and within a few years they've imploded. It wasn't that they lacked ability, they lacked character. The vessel couldn't contain what God was trying to do through them. And here's the tragedy: when character fails, it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone connected to your assignment. Every person who was supposed to be blessed by what God placed in you now suffers because you didn't allow Him to complete the work in you before you rushed into the work for Him. Listen to me carefully. Your private life will always eventually become your public reality. What you do in secret will manifest in the open. The person you are when nobody's watching is the person who will show up when everybody is. You cannot compartmentalize character. You cannot be one person at home and another person on the platform. You cannot abuse people in private and then expect God to bless you in public. It doesn't work that way. I've watched leaders fall, and people always say, I never saw it coming. But the truth is, the signs were there. The compromise was there. The pride was there. The shortcuts were there. The unwillingness to be corrected was there. The resistance to accountability was there. Character doesn't collapse overnight. It erodes slowly, quietly, in the small decisions you make when you think nobody's looking, when you think it doesn't matter, when you convince yourself that the rules don't apply to you. And this is where humility becomes your greatest asset. Pride says, I've arrived. Humility says, I'm still being prepared. Pride says, I deserve this now. Humility says, I'll wait for God's timing. Pride says, I don't need anyone to speak into my life. Humility says, correct me, sharpen me, keep me accountable. And here's the truth that will set you free. Humility doesn't weaken your leadership, it strengthens it. Humility doesn't diminish your influence, it deepens it. Because people don't follow perfection, they follow authenticity. They follow leaders who are secure enough to say I was wrong, wise enough to say I need help, and courageous enough to say I'm still learning. I've watched leaders sabotage their own destinies because they couldn't humble themselves to receive correction. They surrounded themselves with yes men instead of truth tellers. They interpreted every challenge as an attack and every suggestion as a threat. And slowly, imperceptibly, they became unteachable. And when you become unteachable, you become unusable in God's hands. Let me tell you something that might sting a little. Your potential doesn't guarantee your promotion. Your gift doesn't guarantee your elevation. God is looking for character that can carry the weight of what He wants to give you. He's looking for integrity that won't crack under pressure. He's looking for humility that will give Him glory when the blessing comes. This is why some of you have been in the wilderness longer than you expected. It's not punishment, it's preparation. God isn't withholding from you. He's working in you. He's developing the internal capacity to manage the external responsibility. He's building character strong enough to sustain the calling He's placed on your life. And I need you to understand this. The wilderness is not wasted time. Every test in the wilderness is preparing you for a testimony in the palace. Every rejection is teaching you not to build your identity on human approval. Every delay is developing patience you'll need when you're managing people. Every disappointment is deepening the compassion you'll need when you're leading the broken. Joseph didn't waste 13 years, he was being refined. Moses didn't waste 40 years in the desert, he was being repositioned. David didn't waste years running from Saul, he was being molded. Jesus didn't waste 30 years in obscurity, he was being prepared for 3 years of world-changing ministry. Your waiting season is your training season. And what you do in private during the process determines what God can trust you with in public at the palace. Now let me share something that revolutionized my understanding of waiting. I discovered that God doesn't just prepare you during the wilderness, He protects you there. The palace would have destroyed Joseph prematurely. Can you imagine a 17-year-old dreamer with a coat of many colors sitting on Pharaoh's throne? He would have been insufferable. He would have used power to prove his brothers wrong instead of using wisdom to save nations. The wilderness wasn't punishment, it was protection. I've watched this pattern repeat itself countless times. Young preachers who want the platform before they've developed character. Entrepreneurs who want the empire before they've learned integrity. Leaders who want the title before they've earned the trust. And when they get promoted prematurely, it destroys them. Because promotion without preparation leads to frustration, and elevation without foundation leads to devastation. You see, God is not just interested in your success, He's committed to your sustainability. He's building something in you that can last for generations. And that kind of construction takes time. You don't microwave a monument, you don't rush a masterpiece. Think about how gold is refined. The goldsmith doesn't just wave a wand and purify the metal. He applies intense heat and watches carefully as the impurities rise to the surface. He skims them off, then applies heat again. He repeats this process until he can see his own reflection in the gold. That's when he knows it's pure. God is doing the same thing in your waiting season. Every delay is revealing something. Every disappointment is bringing impurities to the surface. Every season of pressure is purifying your motives, clarifying your calling, and preparing you for the weight of what's coming. And He won't stop the process until He can see His own reflection in you. So when you feel the heat, don't run from the refiner's fire. Don't interpret intensity as rejection. That pressure is proof that you contain something precious. God doesn't waste the refining process on fool's gold. He only refines what has genuine value. And here's what many people miss. The wilderness doesn't just change what you can do, it transforms who you are. Joseph didn't just learn management skills in Potiphar's house and prison administration in the dungeon. He was being fundamentally transformed from the inside out. The wilderness strips away the false identities you've constructed. It peels back the layers of who you thought you were based on your environment, your family's expectations, your social status. Joseph went in as the favored son, wearing a coat of many colors. But in the wilderness, that coat was gone. The favor of his father meant nothing. The dreams that once defined him seemed like distant, mocking memories. And in that stripping away, something remarkable happens. You discover who you really are beneath all the external validation. You find the core of your character that doesn't depend on applause, position, or comfort. The wilderness asks you one fundamental question. Who are you when everything is taken away? This is where most people break. Because we've built our entire identity on what we do, what we have, or what people think of us. Take those things away, and we collapse. We have no center, no core. But the wilderness is designed to give you something that success never could, an identity that cannot be shaken. Joseph emerged from that wilderness knowing exactly who he was, not because of a title, not because of a dream he had as a teenager, but because he had been tested at the deepest levels and discovered that his character could withstand the pressure. He learned that his integrity wasn't situational. It wasn't something he practiced when people were watching or when it benefited him. It was who he was, period. You see, Potiphar's wife didn't just test Joseph's morality. She tested his identity. She was essentially asking him, will you compromise who you are for what you want? Will you trade your future for a moment? Will you sacrifice your assignment for temporary pleasure? And Joseph's response revealed that the wilderness had done its work. He knew who he was. He knew whose he was. And nothing, not seduction, not opportunity, not even the guarantee of imprisonment could make him violate that core identity. This is what the wilderness does. It develops in you an unshakable sense of self that isn't dependent on circumstances. It creates a person who cannot be bought, cannot be seduced, cannot be intimidated, and cannot be deterred. Because your identity isn't tied to what's happening around you, it's anchored in what's been built inside you. This is why you need to understand that self-discipline is the pathway to freedom, not restriction. The world has sold you a lie. They've convinced you that discipline is bondage, that structure is imprisonment, that commitment is limitation. But that's backwards, complete backwards. Let me show you what I mean. Look at the musician who never practiced discipline with their instrument. Are they free to play whatever they want? No. They're imprisoned by their lack of skill. They're limited by their undeveloped ability. They're bound by what they never invested the time to master. But the musician who spent 10,000 hours practicing scales, learning theory, training their fingers until discipline became second nature, that person is free. Free to improvise, free to create, free to express whatever's in their soul because the discipline created capacity that the undisciplined will never know. You want to be free financially? Then you need the discipline to save when you want to spend, to invest when you want to consume, to delay gratification when everything in you wants it now. The discipline creates the freedom. The structure creates the space. The commitment creates the options. You want freedom in your relationships? Then you need the discipline of communication, the structure of honesty, the commitment to work through conflict instead of running. People think freedom means doing whatever you feel in the moment. That's not freedom. That's slavery to impulse. That's being controlled by whatever emotion has you in its grip right now. Real freedom is when you've disciplined yourself to the point where you can choose your response instead of being jerked around by your reactions. That's power. That's liberty. That's what it means to be truly free. And here's what most people miss. Self-discipline compounds. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it, you're making a deposit. You're building equity in yourself. You're creating a track record that your own mind can trust. Because here's the truth, most people don't trust themselves. They've made too many promises to themselves that they didn't keep. They've set too many goals they didn't pursue. They've started too many things they didn't finish. And now their own mind doesn't believe them anymore. This is why some people can't even get excited about their own dreams anymore. When they think about doing something new, there's a voice in the back of their mind that says, yeah, right. Like all the other times, their own subconscious has become their biggest critic. Their mind has logged every broken promise, every abandoned project, every half-hearted attempt, and now it's using that data against them. And you know what's tragic? Most people don't even realize this is happening. They just think they've lost their motivation. They think they've lost their passion. They think maybe they're just getting older, more realistic, more practical. No, what they've lost is their self-trust. And once you lose that, everything else becomes harder. I'm telling you, your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you will ever have. If you can't trust yourself, you can't trust your own decisions. If you can't trust your own decisions, you second-guess everything. If you second-guess everything, you end up paralyzed, watching other people live the life you dreamed about. So how do you rebuild this trust? How do you convince your mind that this time is different? You start small. You start with promises you can keep. Don't tell yourself you're going to transform your entire life overnight. Don't commit to running a marathon when you haven't run in 10 years. Start with something simple, something achievable. Maybe it's just, I'm going to walk for 15 minutes today. And then you do it. No excuses, no negotiations. You just do it. And tomorrow, you do it again. And the day after that, you do it again. What you're doing is sending a message to your subconscious. You're saying, I am a person who does what I say I'm going to do. You're collecting evidence that you can trust yourself again. You're building a new pattern, one kept promise at a time. This is not about willpower, this is about integrity, integrity with yourself. And here's what most people miss. Integrity isn't just about the big things. Integrity is about everything. It's about being on time when you said you'd be on time. It's about finishing the book you said you'd finish. It's about going to bed when you said you'd go to bed. Every small commitment you keep is a deposit in your self-trust account. Every small commitment you break is a withdrawal. And right now, some of you are overdrawn. You know what happens when you're overdrawn? The fees compound. The interest accumulates. And pretty soon you're not just broke, you're in debt to yourself. You can't make a significant commitment because you haven't honored the insignificant ones. You can't be trusted with much because you haven't been faithful with little. I've watched people make grandiose New Year's resolutions. This year I'm going to transform my entire life. And by January 15th, they're back to the same patterns. Why? Because they tried to make $1 million commitment with a $10 discipline account. You cannot write checks. Your character cannot cash. Let me tell you what builds character. Repetition. Not inspiration, not motivation, repetition. You want to know why that athlete is disciplined? Because they've done the same boring warm-up routine 10,000 times. You want to know why that musician is excellent? Because they've practiced scales until their fingers moved without thinking. You want to know why that person keeps their word? Because they've kept small promises so many times that integrity became their default setting. The truth is, your future self is being formed by your present habits. Every time you hit snooze, you're training yourself to ignore your own authority. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, you're teaching yourself that your words are meaningless. Every time you quit when it gets uncomfortable, you're programming yourself for failure. But here's the beautiful part. Every time you do the thing you said you'd do, even when you don't feel like it, you're becoming someone different. You're not just completing a task, you're transforming your identity. You're moving from someone who talks about discipline to someone who is disciplined. And there's a universe of difference between those two people. I need you to understand something. Discipline doesn't feel like discipline after a while. It feels like freedom. Right now it feels like restriction. It feels like sacrifice. It feels like you're being robbed of pleasure. But that's because you're still operating with an undisciplined mind that equates freedom with doing whatever you feel like doing. That's not freedom. That's slavery to your impulses. True freedom is having the power to choose your actions regardless of your feelings. It's being able to say, I don't feel like exercising, but I'm going to do it anyway because I am committed to my health. That's power. That's liberation. You see, most people never experience this level of freedom because they've surrendered their will to their emotions. They wake up and ask themselves, how do I feel today? And whatever answer they get determines their entire day. If they feel motivated, they work. If they feel discouraged, they quit. If they feel offended, they lash out. They've become slaves to the tyranny of feelings. But here's what I want you to understand. Your feelings are meant to serve you, not rule you. They're indicators, not dictators. Think of your emotions like the dashboard lights in your car. When the fuel light comes on, it's giving you information. It's telling you that you need gas. But imagine if that fuel light could control your steering wheel. Imagine if that little light could force you to turn left when you need to go right, or make you stop when you need to keep moving. That would be absurd, wouldn't it? Yet that's exactly what we do when we let our feelings control our decisions. The tragedy is that we've been conditioned to believe that authenticity means always following our feelings. We say things like, I'm just being true to myself, or I have to honor my emotions. And while there's truth in acknowledging your feelings, there's danger in obeying them without question. Because your feelings can lie to you. Your feelings can tell you that you're not capable when you absolutely are. Your feelings can tell you to give up when you're one step away from breakthrough. Your feelings can convince you that temporary pain isn't worth permanent gain. I've watched countless people sabotage their own destinies because they trusted their feelings more than their purpose. They felt like ending the marriage, so they walked away from a covenant. They felt like the business was too hard, so they quit 3 months before the breakthrough. They felt discouraged by criticism, so they abandoned the very calling that God placed in their heart. Feelings are not facts. Let me say that again, because it is one of the most liberating truths you will ever embrace. Feelings are not facts. They are signals, they are indicators, but they are not the truth. You can feel like a failure and still be on the path to extraordinary success. You can feel unloved and still be deeply cherished by God and others. You can feel weak and still be stronger than you have ever been. This is why the Bible constantly tells us to walk by faith and not by sight. Because sight is limited to what you can see, and feelings are limited to what you currently perceive. But faith connects you to a reality that transcends your momentary emotional state. Faith anchors you to truth when feelings try to pull you into deception. I have seen people with tears streaming down their faces, feeling absolutely defeated, who were actually standing on the edge of their greatest victory. The enemy knows this. That is why he floods you with negative feelings right before your breakthrough. He magnifies your emotions because he knows if he can get you to make a decision based on how you feel in that moment, he can steal what God has prepared for you. Now, let me be very clear. I am not saying you should ignore your feelings or pretend they do not exist. That would be foolish and emotionally unhealthy. Feelings are real and they matter. They provide valuable information about what is happening inside you. But here is the key. Acknowledge your feelings without being controlled by them. Feel your emotions without letting them dictate your decisions. It is the difference between saying I feel discouraged and saying I am a failure. One is an honest acknowledgement of a temporary emotional state. The other is an identity statement that hands control of your life over to a fleeting feeling. You can say, right now I feel afraid, without concluding, therefore, I should quit. You have the power to separate what you feel from what you do. This is emotional intelligence. This is maturity. This is the mark of someone who has decided that their purpose is more important than their comfort, that their calling is more valuable than their convenience, that their destiny is worth more than their temporary discomfort. And let me tell you something that will revolutionize how you see yourself in your journey. When you operate from this place of emotional maturity, when you refuse to let your feelings dictate your direction, something supernatural begins to happen in your life. You start attracting different kinds of opportunities. You start drawing different kinds of people into your orbit. You start experiencing different kinds of outcomes. Because here's what most people don't realize. The universe, life, God, whatever you want to call it, responds to the energy you emit. When you're constantly reactive, constantly defensive, constantly operating from a place of emotional instability, you're sending out a signal that says, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. I can't handle what I'm asking for. But when you demonstrate emotional maturity, when you show that you can be trusted with disappointment, trusted with delay, trusted with difficulty, you're sending out a different signal. You're saying, I'm ready for the next level. I can handle greater responsibility. I can steward bigger opportunities. I can manage more significant assignments. Think about it in practical terms. Who do you trust with your most important projects? The person who falls apart when things get difficult, or the person who stays steady when the pressure increases? Who do you promote to leadership? The individual who becomes emotional and irrational when challenged, or the one who remains composed and solution-focused regardless of circumstances? You see, emotional maturity isn't just about feeling better. It's about positioning yourself for the future you say you want. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle the weight of their own dreams. Because your dreams have weight. Your vision has requirements. Your destiny demands a version of you that doesn't yet exist. And the only way to become that person is through this process. Through learning to separate your emotions from your identity, through practicing response instead of reaction, through choosing purpose over feelings again and again and again until it becomes who you are. This is the secret that separates those who merely dream from those who actually achieve. This is what distinguishes the talkers from the walkers, the wishers from the doers, the victims from the victors. You have to decide right now, are my feelings going to run my life, or is my purpose going to run my life? Because I promise you, your feelings will volunteer for the job every single day. They'll show up uninvited, unannounced, with an agenda that has nothing to do with your destiny. Your feelings will tell you that you're too tired when opportunity knocks. Your feelings will convince you that you deserve a break when discipline demands your attention. Your feelings will whisper that you've done enough when your purpose is screaming that you've barely begun. And here's what most people don't understand. Your feelings are not trying to destroy you. They're actually trying to protect you. That's their job. Your emotional system was designed to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, to keep you away from pain and toward pleasure. It's a survival mechanism that served our ancestors well when they were running from predators in the wilderness. But you're not running from lions anymore. You're running toward a vision that most people will never have the courage to chase. And that same emotional system that once protected you from physical danger is now protecting you from the very discomfort that could transform your life. It's keeping you safe from rejection, safe from failure, safe from criticism, safe from the unknown. And in doing so, it's keeping you safe from your greatness. This is why you cannot afford to be emotionally driven. This is why you must become purpose-driven, because purpose will ask you to do what's uncomfortable. Purpose will demand that you step into spaces where you feel inadequate. Purpose will require you to have conversations that make your heart race and your palms sweat. Purpose will insist that you show up when every fiber of your being wants to hide. I'm talking to someone right now who's been waiting to feel ready. You've been waiting to feel confident before you start. You've been waiting to feel motivated before you move. You've been waiting to feel inspired before you act. And while you've been waiting for your feelings to cooperate, years have passed. Opportunities have evaporated, doors have closed, and your purpose has been sitting in the waiting room of your life, wondering when you're finally going to invite it in. Let me tell you something that will change everything. You don't have to feel like it to do it. You don't have to feel confident to act confident. You don't have to feel brave to do brave things. You don't have to feel ready to get started. Because here's the truth that high achievers understand. Action creates feeling, not the other way around. You want to feel confident? Start acting with confidence. You want to feel motivated? Start moving toward your goals. You want to feel like a leader? Start making decisions like one. The feeling follows the action, not the other way around. This is why waiting to feel like it is such a dangerous trap. Because if you wait until you feel like it, you might wait your entire life. Feelings are unreliable. Feelings fluctuate. Feelings change with the weather, with your sleep schedule, with what you ate for breakfast. But your purpose, your calling, your destiny, those don't change based on how you feel on a Tuesday morning. So stop asking yourself, do I feel like doing this? And start asking yourself, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? If the answer is yes, then do it, regardless of how you feel. Because here's what happens when you consistently take action despite your feelings. Eventually, your feelings catch up. Eventually, you start to feel like the person you've been acting like all along. This is the discipline of emotional mastery. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about refusing to let them dictate your behavior. It's about saying, I hear you, fear. I acknowledge you, doubt. But you're not in charge here. My purpose is in charge. My calling is in charge. And today, we're moving forward. Let me give you a practical example. Think about the last time you didn't want to go to the gym, but you went anyway. You felt tired. You felt unmotivated. You felt like staying on the couch. But you went. And what happened? Halfway through your workout, you started feeling energized. By the end, you felt accomplished. You felt strong. You felt glad you went. That's action creating feeling. That's proof that your emotions follow your behavior, not the other way around. And what's true for the gym is true for every area of your life. You don't feel your way into right action. You act your way into right feeling. So today, I want you to identify one thing you've been avoiding because you don't feel like doing it. Maybe it's that difficult conversation. Maybe it's starting that business. Maybe it's ending that toxic relationship. Maybe it's applying for that position. Whatever it is, I want you to do it anyway. Not because you feel ready, but because it's aligned with where you're going. Because waiting for perfect conditions is just another form of procrastination. And procrastination is just fear wearing a disguise. You see, every giant you face in life comes with a gift. Every obstacle carries within it a seed of equivalent or greater opportunity. But you'll never discover that gift if you run from the giant. You'll never find that opportunity if you avoid the challenge. David didn't just defeat Goliath, he gained a kingdom. The very battle that everyone else feared became the doorway to his destiny. But here's what most people miss. David had already been fighting battles in private. He'd killed the lion. He'd killed the bear. He'd been faithful in the wilderness where nobody was watching. That's the pattern. Your public victory is always preceded by private preparation. Your breakthrough moment is always built on hidden faithfulness. And right now, wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you're in preparation. This season isn't punishment. It's not a delay. It's development. God is preparing you for something bigger than what you're currently asking for. He's building capacity in you for a blessing that would crush you if you received it prematurely. Stop despising the process. Stop resenting the pressure. The pressure is not trying to break you, it's trying to prepare you. Diamonds aren't formed in comfortable conditions. They are formed under pressure. Gold isn't purified by gentle treatment. It's refined by fire. And you, my friend, you are being refined right now. You are being prepared. Every setback is a setup. Every delay is developing something in you that you're going to need for where you're going. So here's my final word to you. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't let temporary circumstances convince you to abandon permanent purpose. You are closer than you think. The breakthrough you've been praying for is on the other side of the next decision you make. Will you give up or will you get up? Will you retreat or will you rise? The choice has always been yours. The power has always been within you. The question is, will you use it? Your time is now. Your moment is here. Your destiny is waiting. Now go claim it.